Hi folks! Are you looking to empower your players to play wherever and whoever they want across PC and consoles? We're expanding the Epic Online Services Crossplay overlay for Xbox, Switch, and PlayStation, while enhancing its capabilities across all supported platforms. Dive into the details at dev.epicgames.com/news. The Women Creators Program is teaching 100 creatives how to build cross-platform experiences in UEFN, opening up the massive reach of Fortnite to women across India, Pakistan, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Apply now at unrealengine.com/feed. While on the feed, learn how Square Enix and Acquire built a bigger, bolder world with stunning HD 2D style graphics, and how Unreal Engine and the tools within, such as Sequencer, helped them revisit and expand the world of Octopath Traveler in this sequel. Creating an aesthetically pleasing game is hard enough. Now imagine blending 2D and 3D visuals while keeping it mechanically exciting. In a recent developer interview with the developers behind The Plucky Squire, we learned exactly how they did it. Head to the feed for more. Moving over to this week's Community Spotlights. Order up some ice cream in this beautifully vibrant scene created by environment and 3D artist Chihiro Maeda, based on concept art by Maojin Lee. Journey to their art station for a full breakdown. In their recent journey into architectural visualization, environment artist Malviso used a myriad of different software and tools to bring their project to life. Creating all assets from scratch and rendering in UE5, this small getaway house surrounded by nature is a perfect example of their passion. Let them know what you think of music artist and Kitty on the forums. For their final project, filmmaker and 3D motion designer Mathalot has created an intriguing and mysterious short film depicting a dystopian future where society is between an elite living in gigantic skyscrapers emerging from the clouds and a poor and desperate population trapped in a rainy world, residing in misery and crime. Watch this masterpiece in full on their YouTube channel. Thanks for watching this week's news and Community Spotlight.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I'm your host Tina, and today with me I have a couple of the devs behind the newest and greatest update for EOS, Epic Online Services SDK, and we're going to get into all of that a little bit later into the show today, so if you have questions throughout, make sure that you post them in the chat. We also, in addition to, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for, our lovely guests that we have here on screen, we also have a couple of devs who are going to be in the chat and answering questions as well. So if you have any throughout, please feel free to post them. We're here to help any way we can today. But let's get into our guests who we have here invisible with their beautiful faces here for us today. So let's start with you, Josh. Would you mind telling us just a little bit about yourself?
My name is Josh Markowitz. I'm Engineering Director for Epic SDK Online Services. I've been in the industry a little over 20 years. I've been at Epic about 16. My travels kind of took me through gameplay and into online integrations through Xbox, Steam, PlayStation Network, things like that. And I right now lead up the SDK effort to provide all these tools to the general developer population.
Awesome. Very excited to have you on today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And then next we have Zach. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Zachary Younger. I have not been in the industry for as long as Josh has. I joined Epic in 2020, right before the pandemic started, and I have been working in QA with the SDK team ever since. It's been a blast.
Awesome. Also a pleasure to have you on here as well. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know y'all are busy, especially with a recent release out on you. And then in the chat, we also have Rajan and Andy who are going to be answering questions. So big hello and thank you to those two as well. Thank you for being here as well, y'all. So before we get in here, just for general context, for anyone who might not be familiar, do you mind giving just a super quick summary of what Epic Online Services is?
So Epic Online Services kind of came out through the success of Fortnite and Battle Royale. We provided a lot of services growing up through that product, and we wanted to provide that to the general population, just like Unreal Engine has a ton of source code that helps game developers create content and make games. We thought we'd add the online portion to that. Want people to be able to reach out cross-platform and provide things like matchmaking, voice chat, achievements, leaderboards, etc., to the greater population.
Awesome. It's so cool. The amount of value that this package just in general gives to developers and the amount of work that it helps them cut out from having to do so they can focus on other aspects of development is insane. And I just wanted to make sure I put out my personal thanks and kudos to you and the team for the hard work that you do and making this all work for everyone.
Well, it's nice when we see some success stories on the on the store and elsewhere where people using our services and have success, hopefully without too much trouble integrating what we offer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, getting my fangirling out of the way for the services and all that it does for everyone, I am ready to jump into what y'all brought today if y'all are.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So let's
there
start on
we
the
go.
next
Got
slide.
it pulled up.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So as we kind of talked with Tina just at the very beginning here, what are we kind of offering, and why are we kind of offering it, right? So the console playing field has had many requirements that are designed to simplify the developer's effort, and we wanted to kind of provide a familiar look and feel to the user, and that's why we kind of created the SDK. These requirements, they vary by platform, and they can be complicated and burdensome to implement for the average developer. And as Tina said, we want to just be able to let you focus on the game creation as yourself. Additionally, they don't communicate with each other, and there's some sort of intermediate service needs to be provided in crossplay and progression to exist. So we try to do the heavy lifting and provide that common experience that are complementary to the platforms. And through our social overlays and other things you're going to find out here over the next few slides. Zach, next. Yep, there we go. So what we have here, we're not going to really kind of get into all of this, but on the high level, we can divide our services up into two kind of categories. We have game services and then Epic account services. And basically, we can start with game services. They're meant to kind of be an agnostic group of services that you can use without requiring Epic accounts. They're meant to be vertical slices of any kind of features that you may provide yourselves find necessary in the course of game development. So under multiplayer, things like matchmaking and lobbies and voice chat, or under progression, you want to have player data storage and achievements, or things like title storage and player ticketing, kid web services stuff for operations. On the right side, we have Epic account services. They actually do require Epic accounts, thus the name. But the idea here is that through Fortnite, we've created a quite a hopefully healthy ecosystem of players playing games, and being able to connect to those players through our account system is useful to the rest of the developing community. So we have things like account management and linking and login flows, which we're definitely going to spend some time on logins there. Some kind of basic features like rich presence. What's your friend doing? Are they online? Are they available to play a game with you? The friends list. Be able to connect with your friends without creating yet another social graph that you have to kind of join up with as you play from game to game. And then some of the obvious stuff through social overlays, sending game invites, being able to look at who you're interacting with, and maybe block the player or interact with the players in a more social context. We do have some other services like Epic Game Store services, which is e-com, but unless you're kind of a store partner, those aren't quite as relevant. And then kid web services are we're dealing with age gating and child permissions, and trying to make sure that we can handle family security in a safe and common fashion. So I guess the kind of question is, well, why are we doing this a little bit, right? I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but one of the big challenges is just enabling players to play where and how they want. We have crossplay, we have cross progression, we have Proxy. These are all kind of challenges, whether it's cloud saves or just being able to access the same data from any particular platform. But at the end of the day, it just boils down to a player wanting to play on the platform they choose, keep their progress with all their friends. So So as of course Tina announced, this week we did release SDK 1.16 for download for anyone via web links we'll share at the end. But basically I feel like we've added the last few critical pieces that we needed for developers to work. Some things to note, players are connected via a common social overlay available on all platforms. We're going to definitely demonstrate that in a little bit. The SDK integrates with the native APIs on consoles and on desktop platforms when they're available. We have an authentication flow that leverages a player's existing native platform identity. If you came from Xbox, in some cases, users don't even have to know that they're integrating with Epic services in order to access some of the game service features we mentioned on the previous page. And again, I can't just reiterate enough, that this is all platform agnostic. There's no reason why, from a technical perspective, why platform X can't talk to platform Y. So in order to kind of make all this happen, we've also worked with other teams inside of Epic to create the online subsystem for Unreal Engine. That'll be coming along very soon. The marketplace, actually, I think there's quite a few, or at least a handful of decent plugins that are available written by other people in the community. For example, Redpoint has a plugin that's available now on the marketplace. And then just to kind of show again, one of our things that our goal isn't to tie ourselves too strongly to the Unreal Engine itself. It's available for indie devs or who's written their own engine. We also have a Unity plugin, the SDK plugin for Unity is going to be available very soon as well, which will demonstrate all these features for the Unity folks. So I'm going to hand off to Zach, and we're going to actually start going through some of the examples and slides or videos that we have here today.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So this is our own personal in-house kind of application for QA purposes. If you're familiar with Unreal Engine, this is similar to Shooter Game in that it is able to demonstrate a wide variety of functionality. In our case, online features. So it can do anything from authentication to lobbies, multiplayer games, as you're seeing here. It's just been helpful keeping the SDK work distanced from our internal project workflows. And I am going to go through a few videos here that kind of showcase the various functionalities of the SDK using this as an example.
So we'll start with
first, Josh, if you want to intro off.
Yes, I'm just going to kind of interrupt here and make sure we kind of set the stage a little bit. So yeah, we're just going to talk about authentication. I mean, obviously the first thing that a user is going to interact with is being able to log into the system. If you want progression, if you want an identity, you're going to have to, get set up in this way. So basically, of course, this is optional, but in our case with this demo, we do leverage this highly just to kind of demonstrate all the functionality that is available. So once this happens, in an ideal world, you basically are going to call a very simple function called login, and then the SDK is going to take over. And depending on the platform, we're going to provide a custom UI that walks through the account flows, right? So it'll handle things like age gating. Is this person, we do need to kind of understand how old the person is so we know what kind of features are available to them. It's going, in certain cases for children under, people not of consent age, they'll take parental permissions and make sure that those things are square before we let players log in and play with the product. Additionally, in a more transparent world here, we're also trying to let the player know what kind of consent, what are they consenting to? Do we expose their presence? Do we expose their friends list? And so the developer sets up what kind of requests and things they need, and then through the login flow, we make sure that it's transparent to the user what they'll be, what the third-party developer will be taking out of this if they do consent to using it. And then finally, we make sure if on consoles or you're linking an account, say on Steam or Xbox or PlayStation, we want to make sure it's very clear that your Epic account is linking to this particular gamer tag, so that when progression and things happen, that it's clear where progress is being made, right? So hopefully this minor interruption, only happens once when a player plays your game for the first time. If they do revoke access, they'll have to go through those flow again. But for the most part, it's a one-time, hopefully unintrusive experience there. So go ahead, Zach.
So this first example is going to showcase a user that has an existing account but is launching the application for the first time. So the application, they don't have a PlayStation account linked with an Epic account. So the application launches, starts authentication. They have an option here to either create a new account or sign in. Because they already have an Epic account, they're going to choose to sign in, and they'll be shown this QR code, 8-digit PIN code screen, which they can then take to an external browser, and the QR code will take them there directly, or they can type in the address, input the PIN code, and choose an authentication method. In this case, they've got an Epic account directly with Epic credentials. So they're going to put in those Epic credentials, again, all through an external browser. And once that completes, then the application, a few seconds later, screen will change, it'll log them in. If this is the first time that this is happening, also there'll be a consent screen shown as well. Their platform account is shown just so that they know which account it is that they're linking to their Epic account, because it's really important for cross progression to make sure that the user understands that they may already have an account, or they want to make sure that they're linking to the proper account.
Definitely, it's the case. Like, I'm sure some people, familiar with Fortnite's growth over time, people may have created a Switch account while we didn't have crossplay, and then they had an Xbox account, and then, where's your, what kind of account merging can you do? So obviously the best situation is to not have to do an account merge in the first place. But, sometimes that may happen. They may not realize, they didn't have an account. What is an Epic account? I've only played on Xbox. So we do try to make it clear that, the Epic accounts kind of underneath the hood do power a lot of this, keeping social graphs and their data square across different platforms, inventory or profile data, player, cloud saves, things of that nature. So, okay, good.
Yeah. Alternatively, if they don't have an existing Epic account, but they don't want to go through the process of creating a full one, they're able to quickly create a proxy account. It has no information about the user, and it acts as a placeholder for social engagement. So to go through that process, this happens on device. They hit create account, they enter in the very real birth date of January 1st, 2000, and then they proceed to the next screen. The, again, platform account is shown. This is the account that you're linking with, just to make certain that you're making the right decision. And then this is the consent screen. It'll be shown, and once the user accepts the consent, they're signed in. Then from then on, any subsequent sign-ins to the application should go straight in. Don't have to go through that flow anymore.
So the definition of a proxy account, as was kind of alluded to, it's meant to be just really this temporary thing that for users that are maybe not interested in, embracing all of Epic services, this is just kind of a placeholder thing. You may actually find out over the course of the first few hours with your first game that leverages this, that you make some friendships, and so you have a recent players list and you want to interact with some people. So we hope that over time the value of the proxy account will kind of be seen, or the value of Epic services is seen. And so at any time, these proxy accounts can become full accounts, where what we ask for is a username, an email address, and a password. You can get that through UnrealEngine.com or from Fortnite.com when you're interacting with your information there. And there really isn't much difference between proxy and full account, other than full accounts are a little bit more easily recoverable, because we have an email address and password to work with for player support and things of that nature. But end of the day, there's really not too much difference, other than just the speed at which you can log into your account and get started playing the game in one play.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of social engagement, the things that you can do with a proxy or full account, would you like to introduce all of that functionality?
So once you've logged in and you have an account, of course the question is, well, what do you want to do with it, right? So friend discoverability and availability is a key pillar to kind of a successful crossplay experience. We want to give players access to both their platform friends and their Epic friends in a kind of consistent way. We've worked with first-party platform providers in order to kind of create a UX that is approved from a certification standpoint, that hopefully makes sense to users and creates this common experience, that whether you're playing an Epic title or a third-party title that uses these things, that it feels familiar with it. So we also provide, there's some things under the hood, like a moderated social experience, right? We want to be able to leverage existing platform features like block lists, safe display names through text sanitization, and then of course user privacy. Some of these things aren't really easy to demonstrate. We're going to show a few things here in a minute, but for the most part, it's working under the hood, and there's a lot of programmatic APIs that are available that developers can work with to kind of expose, is this user blocked? Is this text string sanitized? Things like that, right? And of course, the second part of social interaction, once you have a list of friends and a way to interact with them, is actually being able to play with them. So being able to send and accept game invites, using things like join via presence, request to join. We're going to cover these things in a few minutes. So we just want to make sure we have a compliant turnkey solution that deal with these complex problems and provide that all to the developers that would rather be focusing on their games.
All right, yeah, so the first thing showcased is joining a game, viewing your lobby. User all of this happens in-game. It'll be reflected in the social overlay. They're able to search for a lobby, view details about the lobby, join, see the various display names of the users inside. The display names listed will be based on the platform that the user is actually playing on. So if you notice that the host user is 2dev and then a string of numbers, that's because they're currently playing the game on an Xbox platform. And if you see right at the end there, it will actually show, if I can pause real quick, the social overlay will also reflect the fact that the user is in a lobby and display all of the other users that are in that lobby, whether they're friends or new players.
And some of the tech that's kind of behind this that again is less than visible on the surface here is the fact that the lobby technology is kind of what's going on here. So in this case, it's very similar to what you find on other platforms, except again the agnostic part. So a lobby is a way to a host can set up a system that players can connect to without worrying about firewalls or NAT traversal being blocked by your router. It's a place where players can congregate ahead of the game and to coordinate game settings or readying up to start a game. Voice chat is available at that time, so people can be actively talking in the lobby ahead of the game. Very similar to what you'd experience in Fortnite's lobby experience as well. The data can be updated in real time if you want to share things like what level am I, or what costume am I wearing, what character class am I. There's all kinds of low frequency data that can be shared among the players to kind of keep them going. Host migration is also available at this time, so if 2dev was to disconnect on accident or on purpose, the information could be promoted to a new leader, and without losing the lobby's state, you can keep going on, so the gameplay isn't interrupted. So, but anyway, we're going to talk about the social overlay on the next slide.
Yeah, there are a number of things that you can do within the social overlay. The social panel presents kind of your party section that shows, like I said, friends and newcomers, players that you maybe have never seen before. You're able to send them an invite, you're able to receive and accept invites, and of course you're notified whenever a friendship is made. So if you look at each of those icons, you're able to see a green dot that represents that your friend is an online presence. Right now there's not a green dot, now there is one with red because they weren't a friend and then they became a friend. So in this case, Red01 isn't a friend. We're able to navigate down to them, open up their profile page, add them as an Epic friend. They get a notification, and once that friendship is made, then the presence status starts being shared between users.
Yep. So ideally, hopefully this common interface, makes sense to people. They'll become familiar with it through the Epic Games launcher. It's also available there. And so this kind of friend management should be kind of ubiquitous.
You can also search for a friend outside of a lobby. That functionality should work regardless of whether you're searching for an Epic name or a platform name. So in this instance, I'm searching for my friend's Epic name. He has an account that is tied to an Xbox account, and he's currently playing on his Xbox account, so that is what is displayed. But because the two accounts are linked, even though I search for the Epic name, I get the full association. And send them a friend request, they see it, they're able to accept it, and it gets reflected back just like you would expect a friend request to get to behave.
Just to be clear, the friendships here. Yeah, I was just going to say, to be clear, the friendships that are being made at this time are Epic to Epic friendships. We don't really kind of get involved with creating console-specific friendships. We do keep track of them, and we will notice them properly within the social overlay. But our job is not to try to keep them in sync, but we are to, we do want to kind of create this, platform agnostic friendship, such that regardless of the platform, maybe I don't have an Xbox, so it's not important that we become Xbox friends, but maybe presumably you're already Xbox friends as well, and we just want you to become Epic friends in case you play on other platforms, console, mobile, or desktop.
Right. So one of the things Josh was talking about earlier, the ability to send game invites to a friend. So in this situation, the user is going to invite their friend to play through the in-game interface. They get an in-game invite as well as a Epic social overlay invite, so they can choose to accept it either way. On the receiver side, on the receiver side, they get both. They can accept either. In addition to sending invites, the overlay also senses when you're able to join a friend even without an invite. So if they're in a joinable lobby, it's called Join Via Presence. It works outside the game as well. We've got native platform invites and native platform Join Via Presence, which we'll demonstrate a little further on. But whenever the game launches, the join invite information is provided, and the game that uses that, the game then uses that to connect to the remote player.
I think the important thing here, in addition, again, we do want to take over as much as we can from some developers. And actually, I guess, being at Epic for so long, I'm used to kind of having the team power to create custom UX, right? Whether it was Gears of War or Paragon or Fortnite. But I have to kind of, over the last few years working on this, have to come to respect that indie devs may not have the time or the team to be able to create their own UX to kind of handle all these features. So it depends on the team, whether or not they want to write their own UX or whether or not they just want to rely heavily on a UX that's provided for them, getting used to the way consoles have been doing it and the way Steamworks does it. But the point is that there is a programmatic API. So it's a little bit crazy in what you're seeing here, that you're seeing both the social overlay popping up and the game popping up their own toasts or notifications. But we're just trying to demonstrate, well, first off, as I said, internally for QA, this is to test all the behavior, but just want to make people know that there's a programmatic way to access this stuff. Or if you don't want to deal with that, the overlay handles it for you at the same time.
Right, and then like previously mentioned, conversely, you're able to, if your friend is in a private game, they're not immediately joinable, you can request an invite from them. The invitation is sent by the proper channels, whatever those may be. In this case, it's cross-platform. I think it's PlayStation 5 to Switch, and so it uses Epic's notification system. Once that request to join is accepted by the host, they then send an invite. That invite can be accepted, and you're put into a lobby together.
Again, at the end of the day, all this really is doing is just sending a message to someone to say, please send me an invite. So all the code pathways are the same as if the host had sent the invite in the first place. But again, there are programmatic switches to be able to let you auto accept, all requests to join, let them in if the game conditions are correct, or otherwise auto block, maybe a MOBA or a game like that where invites, we actually have allow invites, so we can set that to false, so you can't even send an invite. But the point is if there were some game conditions that said, not right now, come back later, we can auto reject or auto accept, or just let the user kind of handle it as they see fit.
Yeah, I think you want to talk a little about the trust and safety coming
right?
up.
The less than exciting bit of all the stuff, which is trust and safety. The idea is that users need protection from themselves or from each other. So where possible, the overlay implements this native platform's trust and safety and privacy guidelines. We try to handle as much of that for you, as well as implement Epic's own trust and safety guidelines as well. So what are we talking about, right? They're important safety contracts that we people have come to expect over the years with online interaction, and they are critical requirements for platform certification as well. So for example, the social overlay respects platform name display name rules. If a name that, some platforms have full names versus gamer tags, and whether you want to see one or the other, we try to kind of look at the values that are the user's preference and display only what they expect. We provide a moderated social experience that respects these native settings. So, if a native user is detected as blocked, we won't let them interact with you. There's nothing extra you have to do to kind of expose a console's block list to the SDK. So we'll get into some of the examples on the next slide in a second, but display names, for example, because we are dealing in a cross-platform environment, each development system may have their own sanitization requirements. Something that's acceptable on one platform may not be on another. So we run all user-generated content, all text strings, things like that run through the SDK where we're responsible for displaying them, or some expectation that we're giving you information to display, and we make sure that we kind of run through that so that you don't have any unexpected surprises. We also user privacy settings are respected. If they want to be seen as offline, or if there are other permissions that maybe a parent has set up, right? They'll be able to block each other. They'll be able to opt out from cross-platform play. So the second side of this coin, again, is user permissions, right? Maybe a parent has said that my child is not allowed to voice chat, or maybe you're not allowed to send and receive friend requests, as well as to play online at all. Maybe you're stuck in the single player experience. So whether the SDK can actually enforce all of these itself, we do our best to provide that and expose that information in the course of gameplay, such that developers can, we can't do it all for you, but there's plenty that we do try to do or expose to you. I just want to make sure the SDK exposes that and all the features that exist, so that you can certify on those first party platforms.
Yeah, so two of the trust and safety features that we are able to kind of showcase here. The first one being string sanitization. According to platform guidelines, like Josh said, what may be acceptable on one platform may not necessarily be acceptable on the other. So in this example, we've got a friend, bottom of the friends list. His name's Naughty Nigel. He's very naughty. He likes to have bad words in his display name on some remote platform. And because his Epic account and that platform are linked under ordinary circumstances, his display name would show up. But because his name is not acceptable to Sony's guidelines, it gets sanitized. It's shown as a string of asterisks. Additionally, you're able to block this player, which I think that's the next showcase. But before then, Josh, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, go ahead. Move to the block list. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, block list. So alternatively, you can just straight up block this player. When they're blocked, they won't be able to reach the person who's blocked them by any means. They can't send them game invites. They can't send them friend requests. If they're in a lobby together by some happenstance, they won't be able to voice chat. So it's not demonstrated here, but the SDK also provides an API for handling sanctioning players. The game can provide information to the developer with context about whatever situation that is, and then the developers can then use that information themselves, and then via our tools sanction the player as they deem necessary. But
this really
speaks
overlay kind of into.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, please finish. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, you see that it says platform, or it says Epic blocked. If you were platform blocked as well, it would show as platform blocked instead. So it keeps track of where the player is blocked. So if you run into a player that if you've run into a player previously on PlayStation to PlayStation and you want to platform block them, and then you're playing on your Xbox or something, and you by happenstance run into that player again, you can see it'll show as platform blocked.
Yeah, so just wanted to kind of mention to the game sanctioning part that he mentioned through, easy anti-cheat and some of the features that we've been doing there. The anti-cheat group has a bunch of features that are provided, which, for example, is the sanctioning. So at the end of the day, we don't know what might be considered, cheating in your game, or maybe bad sportsmanship or bad play. So there, for the ability for the game to programmatically report a user, provide a context, such as the map name or the score or the conditions under which, the player reported that. It does all go back to our backend dev portal, and then developers able to kind of see reports and, make choices based on the kind of information that they've been capturing, whether or not this user needs to be actioned, or maybe there's some code that needs to be adjusted in the next update to kind of, address ways that the players should not be maybe working or using the game as by design. So.
And then
so next, the game integrations. Like this is the most complicated, I guess, part of the system, because at the end of the day, as we've kind of alluded to in the past, there's a lot going on the different platforms that require kind of integration, whether it's with Xbox or PlayStation. At the end of the day, Epic's not able to reach all players in all situations, but as long as there's Epic code running in your game, we kind of, there's a way to kind of work through the native APIs to mirror that data onto the console. So if I'm playing in a session and I have a lobby, I can use Xbox or PlayStation or Switch APIs to mirror that information. A friend can see you from the console dashboard, see that you're online, maybe join via presence is enabled, maybe send invite is enabled, and you can interact with that person. So it goes far beyond the SDK. The SDK tries to do as much as it can to handle these things, but we'll basically kind of show some of these examples on the next screens.
Yeah, so in this example, we've got a user on Xbox One and a user on Xbox Series X. They're Xbox friends, but they're not Epic friends. And so the one on the Xbox One in a lobby, and he wants to send an invite to his friend who's online, but not in the application on his Series X. So it sends a native platform invitation, which the friend is then able to accept. It will launch the game, it will authenticate them, and it will place them into the lobby.
In this particular case, like what we're doing, right, is we're basically taking some SDK payload and we're piling it into the native API such that when the game, we call it, I guess, I call them bootable invites, right? So when the game is launched by the console, you get a notification through console APIs that say, you were trying to join your friend, please take this information and make that happen, rather than going to the main menu of the game. So what you do is typically kind of unpack that payload, which will probably say something like a lobby ID or a session ID where your friend can be joined. You would then constitute that, kind of reconstitute that information into the SDK, which would get your data and your overlay in a good state. And then, of course, do what it means to, load the map and join your friend And then, as you can see in the demo here, that's kind of what's happened in the most simplest of terms.
Yeah. And then lastly here, I think we have an example coming from 1.16.1 or some future release where essentially implementation of achievements. There's not really a whole lot to talk about here, but
no, it was just something fun at the end to kind of show, like, so achievements have been around since, you know, the early days of the SDK. With Epic Games Store, they've kind of added support through the overlay to be able to show the achievements that are listed in the social panel that you saw over there. I just, you know, it's kind of important to note we're not, you know, on some platforms where they already provide achievement support, our overlay is not going to interact. We're not trying to confuse users with Xbox or PlayStation trophies and achievements. But on other platforms, you know, we may want, or maybe you're just a developer that released a game from your own store and you want to have achievements, the ability to kind of set up achievements and work through that stuff. I would assume in most, like, you know, AAA development, you may unlock these achievements here just so that you can kind of get that sense of cross progression achievement. So, you know, you unlocked an Xbox achievement and the Epic achievement at the same time. You see the Xbox fanfare on this device, but when you go and play on another platform, you can kind of query, did I unlock this achievement? Yes, you have. Maybe it, you know, it means something on the other platform, or just in your own custom UX, you can, you know, show a cross progression experience related to achievements.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. We're gonna.
I think that's everything. Yeah.
Move into questions. If Tina, you've been collecting some, we'll do our best to answer what we can.
Awesome. Yeah, we've got a few here. There may be parts of these questions that were answered during the presentation, but I figure just in case anybody missed any part of it earlier, it's fine to answer the full question when it comes to those.
Can't hurt to reiterate, right?
Yeah, exactly. The first question we have here is from the HeartNet, and they're wondering, would this have to be connected with Epic accounts no matter what, or could you connect players from standalone clients like Steam, etc.?
So that's a great question. I mean, it also speaks a little bit to the, you know, trying to spread the good word here of what we're trying to do, right? At the end of the day, we're trying to do cross progression. So no, you do not have to use Epic accounts in order to do this. If we could go back to the old slide where I was mentioning the services. There's the game services side. So if your game strictly was, I want to use lobbies, I want to use voice chat, I want to use matchmaking, some of the features that don't require, and you want to say leverage Steam player social graphs at the same time. So the way this works is in the login code that we have two kind of login methods. One is to interact with the Epic side of things. The other is you can take a Steam authentication token, pass it right into this login method, and associate your Steam account with a we call them product user IDs. They are not the account service part that we were talking about. So a product user ID is simply just a number that associates this user throughout the agnostic side of the game services. So your your Steam token or your Xbox token or whatever, we have a wealth, like I think we support, mod.io or, you know, all these other different, there's a whole list in the documentation, but you can attach and link an account to this product user ID instead. And therefore, yes, you can be completely under the hood with the Steam product or an Xbox product, or I think, you know, we support Oculus as well. So yes, I guess is the answer. You do not have to do this. It does, of course, it has limitations. The rich presence part, the friends list and social graph aspects do not work, but you can certainly create a game that is cross-play without using Epic account services.
Next question we have here is from Thomas Franklin, and they're wondering, not sure if it was said, but is the demo game for the SDK Poppin' Dots available? If not, would it be made available as a learning experience and or demo/sample to show the integration of the SDK with the game?
I know we
question.
Shipped some sample applications, right? I know we shipped some sample applications. Is AOS Demo itself available?
No, right. So the sample, like someday. So here's the little conundrum we had, and that hopefully a reasonable explanation. Given the nature or the mission of the SDK was to provide a C API that was not tied to Unreal Engine, that, and you know, Unity developer or any kind of custom folks, we had a hard time with, like, well, how do we demonstrate our sample stuff without using Unreal Engine? So then it came time, like we actually have, as Zach mentioned, we do have samples with the SDK there. I try to call them more like features, where there's a login feature, there's the lobby feature, the sessions feature, achievements feature. They all, the goal was to kind of minimize the amount of code you needed to understand in order to kind of get how lobbies work or get how unlocking achievements work. Those, unfortunately, they work on Windows and Mac and Linux right now. But the crazy kind of story for that is we actually evaluated, should we write some sort of non-Unreal Engine cross-platform rendering API to make Poppin' Dots? And I could just see Tim's, he's like, you took 5 months to make a cross-platform rendering engine when Unreal Engine is right here. What are you, crazy? So we used Unreal Engine. Under the hood, it actually does try to abstract away as much of the engine as possible to make Poppin' Dots more, standard C and just generic code that doesn't require idioms from Unreal Engine. Of course, maybe this audience is more tied to Unreal Engine. They're like, well, give me the engine and give me the sample. It makes sense. But I also didn't want people to be like, I'm a Unity developer. I have to download Unreal Engine in order to use your samples. So long-winded answer. I hope it was kind of a funny story. But someday we would like to release this demo once we clean it up a little bit more. You can imagine it's a little hackier than we'd like it to be because it's trying to prove some things out. And but so anyway, the answer is no. It's not available this time. We do have samples, and someday for Unreal Engine folks or people that want to get maybe the binary version from the launcher, this would work for them, but not today.
Awesome.
We do have we do have a good community support, right? Like the community support. If you have any questions about the existing samples, or if there are community folks that are even on this stream right now that are paying attention. We're open to all questions about getting started or the samples, how they work, and how you might do things. So we do have that support there, even without the demos. Sorry to add that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good for them to know that there's always extra support available if they need it. Next question here is from Shadow TJ NL. I'm slaughtering that one. I'm so sorry. They're wondering, how is crossplay handled between PlayStation and Xbox network? Is it a Epic account, but with those two host platforms working together?
Question. I mean, there's different scenarios. I'm sure we could talk a whole topic on this. So, for example, like Fortnite, right? The way we use cross-platform is through dedicated servers. So we have, they're platform agnostic in the sense that it's either a Linux server or maybe a Windows server that's running outside of the consoles. And so at the end of the day, the network traffic is going to neither platform, and then that dedicated server is routing the traffic. And of course, that is really more of a generic networking thing, like is network byte order set up, or like are you doing your endianness correctly? And I'm sure there's been other talks here where, how does Unreal Network do these things? If you want to talk about peer-to-peer, the SDK does offer, and we've had it for a while in the SDK, which is maybe why I wasn't even thinking about it, but we have a peer-to-peer API as well. So the peer-to-peer API can connect users to each platform. They also can hit through firewalls and use a relay system that we have set up throughout the world in order, with a little bit of delay, to be able to, it doesn't matter what kind of firewall you have, we can get players talking to each other. Now, I'll admit, I've been drinking the dedicated server Kool-Aid for far too long. I'm sure there are a few certification issues, or like whether or not Sony or Microsoft have like the the encryption, and there's other security issues about how console A talks directly with console B. So I would have to get back to you on that to answer that better. But in general, yes, crossplay works. The peer-to-peer stuff works. Dedicated service is the typical way these days that people are kind of solving this problem. But I'd have to think deeper on the actual solution for direct peer-to-peer.
Understandable.
But no, peer-to-peer, also to answer the question, peer-to-peer does not need Epic accounts either, right? You would create that product user ID, and then you can just initiate a connection with someone, much like Steamworks. If people are familiar with the Steamworks API, you kind of get a notification that says, Josh would like to start a peer-to-peer connection with you, and then you can either accept or decline. That would be what the host's job is to do, depending on the circumstances. And then the connection would be opened. You could send your UDP type or reliable or unreliable data traffic between each other, and then facilitate gaming.
Awesome. Next question here is from Sifarab6. They're wondering, does this work for mobile devices as well? And if not, cross-platform with PC or console, maybe between Android and iOS?
Question. So we've been trying since May of 20. We've been trying to have a mobile parity with the rest of the SDK. So the short answer is, does this SDK work on Android and iOS? Yes, it does. The overlay and the auth flows that we're describing as part of SDK 1.16 are not available on mobile just yet. That shouldn't stop you, again, from there are many features that still work on mobile. And to your question, like the ability to talk mobile to console or mobile to mobile devices is certainly there. Having those flows that easily connect you to Epic accounts or to interact with outside the programmatic API for in-game invites and things like that will be coming soon. We are working on that, sorry, let me temper my words. Soon is a relative term. We are working on it. We are trying to get it out. But yes, mobile play is something you could experiment with today, and through the community, I'm sure we could answer a lot of questions and get you into a place that's in working shape. Like voice chat, voice chat works, lobbies work, achievements work. So.
That's very cool. And this is a follow-up question for me. Does that include, like they were saying, from mobile to console or mobile to PC as well? Or are you saying that mostly just between mobile devices themselves, like between internet?
At the end of the day, again, barring the kind of security encryption type things that consoles may require, or like at least my experience, once upon a time you had to write up your plan and have it approved by the console developers. At the end of the day, yes, at least in the simplest case, Windows to iOS, Windows to Android, totally works. Right?
Awesome.
I mean, in theory, you could play a whole game not even literally connected. If you created a lobby and like you guys connected through through the lobby code, and I was on Windows and you're on iOS, we could send gameplay traffic through the lobby, and we're not, although it would be highly, maybe high ping times or more latent than you'd want it to be, you certainly could facilitate, working that way. But I mean, actually, Zach, real quick, you've tested Poppin' Dots on mobile, and you've played it with all the console games as well, or is that just Windows?
Me personally, it's been a while since I've touched Poppin' Dots on mobile. I know that work is being done and that it is being tested on mobile, so it is there. But
yeah, I'm not trying to lie.
It's
here.
not really my wheelhouse.
Like, Josh, I've never seen this. But yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it should work. It is there.
I know it. I know it's a thing. Mobile just isn't my wheelhouse.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, our goal, we've kept it up and running. We do definitely QA all the platform agnostic bits. The only part, like I said, is missing is the UX that we provide to you for login and for social.
Yeah, awesome. That's very cool. We have another question here from Shadow TGNL, and this one is the voice fully open on fair use policy or a paid extension?
Everything here is free, right? So, and of course we get people saying, really, is it free? But I mean, so basically, if you read into the terms, unless Epic specifically says somewhere that we're deprecating a feature or changing the end user license agreement, we are promising 3 years of functionality from that date, and that date has never happened. So it is all free. The voice implementation is free. I think the answer is that, like Fortnite is a pretty big player these days. We're getting, we're happy to provide that experience through our backbone while that's happening. So short answer is yes, voice is free on all platforms. There is no paid tier for support. I mean, we are trying to get people to community support, community helping community, much like the Answer Hub with Unreal Engine. When we have some really great community folks that I work with them all the time. They bring to us difficult questions. They are super capable of reproing steps themselves, trying it like their own code. They definitely go the extra mile to kind of make things work. So, but that's free.
Right. Which is one of my personal favorite parts about all of this is just here, have this, have it, please take it, use it. It's amazing.
I mean, it's been said that, some people prefer something over another just because it costs more, right? Like this must be a better product because it's $1,000 a license. But I think it's been proven that there are plenty of things out there that are open source or community driven that can be just as good. And I mean, as far as I know, the SDK is here to stay and it's free for now. And you'd get 3 years of notification if something like that was to change.
Yeah, which is awesome. Next question here is from BrainDX. They're wondering, is there a way to check whether a given platform account already has an associated Epic account before showing a dialog? And relatedly, can an EOS user upgrade to a full Epic account later?
There's two questions there. Let's take the first one. So that was a requested feature for a while. And for a while, we actually were like, no, because it was, there's a lot that goes on in the course of like logging in and checking or not whether or not the user has consented or whether they exist or not. And so the backend team was like, this is pretty complicated. But we ultimately, yes, I forget which version. I think it's in SDK 1.15 somewhere. Maybe it's in 1.16 now. It's definitely in 1.16 now. But there is a flag on login that basically says return an error code if we needed. If we would have created the overlay, return an error code instead. So you can kind of check to see if you log in first successfully. And then if that fails with that error code, you would then call login again. Whatever the logic dictated, whether you want to do something else or want to log in now that that's there. And then there's also the ability, once the user has logged in, you can kind of see or infer information about like display names on other platforms. So even if I'm logged in on Xbox, this is not shareable by everyone. You don't have to do your own plumbing for yourself, but you can basically tell that I'm Josh on my local client, that I also have a Steam account, or that I'm on Xbox and I have a PlayStation account. In theory or in practice, most of that stuff's not useful, right? If I have an Xbox user's ID, but I'm on Steam, there's no API I can call to kind of leverage that. But we do provide information of what's their display name or, that they exist at all on those other platforms. Do you mind repeating the second question? Because I feel it was very, very, there's some nuance there.
The ability to upgrade to a full account.
Oh, right. So so there's two ways. That question is a little ambiguous, so let me answer it in two different ways. One, as was demonstrated in the videos, a proxy account can be upgraded, right? So there are rules to this, which is if you have an Xbox and you play Fortnite only on Xbox, you probably have a proxy account under the hood and you don't know it, and everything's been fine. There's no interaction. If you were to then play on the second device, what would happen is it would say, we've never seen your PlayStation user before. Would you like to make a new account? Hopefully at that moment, someone would say, I played on Xbox. So when they go to that off-device thing that was demonstrated in Zach's video, they would log in with their Xbox credentials, even though they are currently waiting to play on PlayStation. That would then go and make sure that you can, if it was a proxy account, it would then say, well, before we can connect this other account to this thing, we need more details about you. So that's when the email address and password comes in. So a proxy account can only ever have one external auth linkage. So now you're asking for your second one, and so you're going to kind of upgrade that account. Now, I also read that question as a second way, which is to the question a few questions ago, which was, do you need Epic accounts at all? So the answer is no. So let's say you were playing a game and you just were using our agnostic services for library. So you created for lobby. So you created a product user ID and you're playing on different platforms. So now we kind of call them key rings. So let's say you have this key ring that has a Steam token and an Xbox token and a PlayStation token on it. If your game wanted to shift over and start using Epic account services after the fact, that's a little tricky, right? Because we got to make sure that we make just because you can log in with an Epic account, now you have to double check this Epic account and its Xbox keyring. Is this the same user, right? This could be Josh 1 on Xbox associated with my Epic account, but Josh 2 associated with my product user ID. So it gets a little bit more complex. I do believe there are solutions, but we've never had a customer or a partner that's been that didn't start with one or the other and then stayed. So I guess the answer would be, let's work with community. We could answer those questions, but I think there's a way out of it. It just requires a lot of QA to make sure that we test the edge cases, how people link and unlink and consent and unconsent, what kind of situations can they be in that might cause them, player support, having to call player support.
Yeah, definitely.
I was long-winded, but I hope I answered their question for whatever scenario they were interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question here is, feels like kind of an extension to the previous discussions about different kinds of crossplay, like between mobile and such. But is it possible to have cross-platform features, getting my words twisted, between VR, Oculus, MetaQuest, and the rest with PC, console, mobile?
I guess the honest short answer is I'm not sure. I see no reason why not. To me, that we've definitely had some people internally work on. At the end of the day, most of the VR stuff is it Android? I'm not super familiar with the tech that goes behind each and every VR headset. But in theory, I feel it's more of a UX problem than a technical challenge, right? Like, how do you log in on these devices? How do you kind of get these connectivity things going? Is the game suitable in VR and non-VR worlds? But again, at the end of the day, I think it's just network traffic. So if they all talk to a dedicated server, for example, why not, right? But again, my experience with VR is actually fairly limited. So I would be optimistic in the answer, but I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer. But I did say, like, we do support Oculus. We have had partners that do have logged in and have done work. I mean, that's also one of the natures of the freeness of this thing and the fact that anyone can download it at any time. If there are people out in the wild doing this stuff successfully, we have, like, through Discord channels or IRC channels, I know we've heard various things of, like, does Oculus work, or does Meta work, things like that. And then we just kind of send people on their way. So if there are success stories out there, I'd love to hear them. But I think for the most part, I'm optimistic that is definitely.
Awesome. Just making sure. It looks like we've got only a couple left. Next one is from Sloth2. Love the name. Just have to say that first. But they were wondering, what's the back end hosted with?
Well, I guess in the simplest answer, I mean, Epic Services uses AWS. If that's the question? I mean, for the most part, that stuff is really an implementation detail. It's what Fortnite uses. It's what Rocket League and all our Fall Guys uses. So it's just, there are just services out there, and the SDK hopefully makes that more of an implementation detail. But if there was more specific as to why that choice or what they might do with that information, I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think the final question that I have for y'all is from Handtrax007. And they're wondering, can I use the SDK even if I don't own a company and if I'm just an enthusiastic dev?
Of course. I mean, again, I would love to hear those success stories, right? It's out at the end of the day, in order to download the SDK, you can read the documentation, you can download the SDK. We do ask that you log into our dev portal and create an Epic account in order to, if it became a big thing, for you to be able to manage your project and work. There are some settings that you do need to work with. So that is an expectation that you create an account, but there's no expectation that you're a big company, a small company, 2 devs, 100 devs. It doesn't matter.
Free for everyone.
I'd love to. Yep, it's free. You can play with it. I mean, and like that's the thing, unlike Unreal Engine, who does have, there's requirements that after you make so much money or so and such, you have to kind of report that. There's no expectation on the SDK side. So hobbyists, enthusiasts, people that are just interested in making something, it does, just give it a try. And I would love to hear about it in the community channels.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. That's all the questions that we have for y'all right now. Of course, if there were any smaller questions that were in the chat that either were answered previously or you missed it, make sure you check out in there. We had Rajan and Andy answering a bunch of stuff, so make sure you scroll through, find some extra answers in there, as well as if you think of any other questions moving forward after this stream is over maybe and you're just watching this as a video on our channels, please feel free to redirect any of those questions over to our Epic developer community at dev.epicgames.com/ either community or SDK. I think either would be a good place to go for questions that you might have in regards to this. But yeah, thank you both so much for coming on today and talking more about the SDK and this new version that was released. And this overlay is incredible. It's very exciting. I'm really excited to see what people end up doing with it.
Thanks for your time and thanks for listening in, everybody. I was a little worried about the reception of Poppin' Dots, but it sounds like there's an interest out there, so we'll.
It's a great game. It's fun to just pop dots, Yeah,
it's a real game. It works. You do pop the dots, and you can win. So, anyway, all right. Thanks so much, Tina, for letting us on.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time to be here, like I said earlier. And also a big thank you to everyone who watched the show today. It wouldn't be what it is without you and your interaction and you being here and answering questions and being involved. So thank you all so much for taking the time to come hang out and learn more about the Epic Online Services SDK today with us. And if you missed any other part of the stream earlier, No worries whatsoever. We post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on demand on both our Twitch and YouTube channel at Unreal Engine. You can also follow us on all social media at Unreal Engine if you want the latest news and updates. And if you haven't already, as I mentioned just previous to this actually, please come join us at our Epic developer community. We host all kinds of content there. We have tutorials from both our devs and other community members that they have put together. We have our forums there where you can ask questions as well as meet other like-minded developers and so much more that I wouldn't even be able to cover in just a short, succinct period of time here. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you go do so. It's a lot of fun. There's so much available there for you from both beginners all the way to experienced devs. So have fun over there, explore, and let us know if you have any feedback on any of this, as well as the streams, or of course, the Epic developer community itself. But with that, one last big thank you to Josh and Zach for coming on today, and another big thank you to Rajan and Andy in chat for answering questions there. And we'll see all the rest of y'all next week for next week's Inside Unreal and LFG episode. Bye, everyone.